Hello and welcome to a conversation on the Daily Bern. I'm your host, Eric Miller. Today I'm joined by an awesome progressive candidate from the great state of Pennsylvania, Tara Zrinksi. How you doing, Tara?
Great. Thanks so much.
Thank you for taking some time to chat with me. I look at races around the country and around states and stuff like this, and I saw yours. And the thing that excited me, it's a Pennsylvania State House. You're running for PA House 138, and we'll get into that. I'll pull up the district, your website. You know, you made it through the primary. The general election is November 3rd. But the thing that inspired me is the total number of votes that the Republicans got in the primary, and it's currently held by a Republican incumbent who's retiring, I believe. Is very close to the total number of votes that you got in the primary. So this is a very flippable seat. So I wanted to talk to you about that, which we will. But I always like to kind of start at the beginning, a little bit of, your background, what animated you politically. Can you get into that a little bit?
Sure can. So I am from Bethlehem. I was born and raised here. And some of the things that I experienced as a kid were like just sitting around the dinner table talking to my parents about politics. I remember my dad talking about Ronald Reagan, you know what I mean? And that trickle down stuff, that's never going to work. And, he was a union guy, and he eventually he got laid off from making teletypes for Western Union. I mean, can you imagine? I don't even think that anybody my age knows what a teletype is, and forget about the new generation.
Right.
But my dad went into another industry fixing TVs, right? Because he thought, well, every house is going to have a TV. And so now he's going to fix those. And once Silo and Circuit City came in and they made their big warehouse kind of venues, lost his job. So he started his own, just like a lot of other people do. And he was a small business owner. But that didn't work out. He then became like a person who fixed printing presses. So I've seen my dad go through all these iterations of jobs in his lifetime. And now he's 74 years old. He still drives a bus for a local school. And most of that is just to keep up with his bills, because he's almost never going to be able to retire. And I just think this is the state of our lives. This is the race that we're running in right now. And my mom has diabetes. So her insulin costs like $400 a month. And so they're just trying to put their bills together. I'm a single mom. I'm an adjunct professor at the local community college. And I know that I have a hard time getting enough classes every semester just to keep up. So I have another job as a solar energy consultant. And beyond that, I am a Northampton County councilwoman. So I am always on the go. And for a long time, either I had healthcare or I didn't have healthcare, or I was between healthcare. So a lot of these things really formed my platform for Medicare for All, and also $15 minimum wage and education. These are big things for me. Beyond that, I'm always working some part-time gig as an adjunct instructor. Yeah. So I was a blogger for shalereporter.com, and I got really into this fracking and environmental things. I was one of 4 eco-feminist bloggers talking about fracking and pipelines in Pennsylvania. That really got me involved in environmental issues, because I saw so many people that were adversely impacted, whose water went bad, whose land had become fallow, and like their animals who just, were, what do I want to say, sterile. It was harsh. And seeing the environmental impacts and then the impacts to their health, I just felt compelled to do something. I became a local coordinator for Food and Water Watch and started on pipeline issues and fracking across Pennsylvania. That was my first sort of venture into politics, because you get up at municipalities and at county councils and in Harrisburg, and you rally people and you make speeches and you try to get people excited about these environmental issues. But they're sort of like, we need to put food on our table, and oh, by the way, we don't have enough money for healthcare. So you realize there's all these systemic problems that need to be fixed. And so we have to do everything together. And that's the heavy lift. That's why I'm going to Harrisburg.
Right on. Love that. And I love that you said Medicare for all. I think your website says healthcare for all. It doesn't say Medicare for all explicitly. So,
Yeah.
let me ask you a little bit about fracking. I love that you got into that. I know that's one of your issues that you're passionate on is the environment, and you have an event coming up on Monday, which we'll plug here in a little bit. What does that look like? I was just talking to someone in another district, and they were saying, one of the drawbacks that we don't think of is the short-term burn, right? So a fossil fuel company might come in and throw a big check at a landowner. The landowner will take the check, and like you said, it will essentially destroy the land, right? Versus say sustainable a wind turbine, right, which requires maintenance, but then it does not destroy the land, and you have that revenue indefinitely, because once fracking is used up, then they just move on to the next, right? Can you talk about, is that an issue in your district?
Well, that's the funny thing. It's not necessarily an issue in my district, but we have a pipeline going through my district, the Pennies Pipeline. So the Pennies Pipeline goes from Lucerne County, and it was intended to go through Mercer County. That started open season in 2014. And because I was coordinator for Food and Water Watch, I was at the forefront of the actions that were formulated here in, I would say, the Lehigh Valley. To this day, that pipe is still not in the ground. So 6 years later, the pipe's not in the ground, but they're trying to segment the pipeline project because New Jersey effectively stopped the pipeline with the Third Circuit Court of Appeals said that you can't put a pipeline on state-owned open space. And because the pipeline was scheduled to go through there, it effectively stopped it at the border. So now PennEast is coming back and trying to create a situation where they segment the pipeline, and they go through phase one. They try to seek approval for that. Then they justify the second segment by having the first segment exist. And then they're going to try to justify the third and the additions of the pipeline through New Jersey. This is something that, people across Pennsylvania and New Jersey, across the pipeline route, are trying to stop. And I guess 2 days ago, September 2nd, was another public commenting period that ended with FERC. And there were, a couple hundred comments on the docket. So people are still very vigilant about this pipeline, even 6 years later. But in terms of my experience with fracking, in this area, I know that the pipeline brings natural gas from areas that are called like sacrifice zones. They sacrifice themselves to bring in and extract this fossil fuel, right? So everybody hopes that they're going to be a shaleionaire. The landman comes, he knocks on your door, and he talks to you, and he puts a big check in front of you. And a lot of these people are in vulnerable communities where they're struggling.
Of course,
They don't have money for their farms, and farming itself is a difficult business right now, or they have a piece of open land that they're not using, and they think, why not? Because the landman tells them that it's safe, it's going to bring jobs, and it's also, a really great source of cheap and abundant fuel. So people are all about it until their water is polluted, until they start feeling the environmental impacts and the health impacts. And I've met so many people across Pennsylvania like this. If you go up to Montrose, Pennsylvania, and you talk to Vera Scroggins, or you talk to anybody inside the box in Dimmock, they'll tell you exactly what has happened to their little town. And it's a divisive issue because not everybody's well fails. And when you talk about like how much production can come from a fracking well, it falls off pretty quickly, so it is almost predatory because you have to go from one well to the next, to the next, to the next. And right now in Pennsylvania, one of the things that's going on in the legislation is natural gas is very dominant with the lobbies. And they have tried to influence our legislature to be pro natural gas and pro fossil fuel. And it has really suppressed renewable energy and suppressed our renewable energy portfolio standards from ever increasing. Yeah. But what the real issue is that natural gas really isn't making money for the industry. It's not really making money for the pipeline companies when they can't put the pipeline in the ground for 6 years. So they're starting to switch, and we're noticing that these cracker plants that are going through. So these are petrochemical plants that are going to manufacture plastic. So our future in Pennsylvania is based on these petrochemical plants, because you have an order that makes the petrochemical plants have tax breaks for like the next 26 years in millions of dollars. So it's really hard to think that it's not just confined to fracking. The issue is so much more broad and goes into so many different areas that I think we really have to address it now. And again, that's why I want to go to Harrisburg.
Yeah, right on. And what better an advocate to talk about these things? Obviously, you're passionate about it. I don't suppose you said that they lobby the representatives. I'll just straight up call it a bribe, but lobby.
Yeah,
whatever. I don't imagine you would get into Harrisburg and then suddenly take a giant check from Chevron or whoever the evil villain is, right? That's fair to say.
No, I have already signed an agreement to not take fossil fuel money. I'm not taking pharmaceutical money, and I'm not taking any super PAC money, or corporate PAC money, because honestly, that's one of my another issue that I want to address too, is that there's so much corruption in Harrisburg. You can buy a legislator, and it's it's open bribery, because you're allowed to accept as many gifts as you want as a legislator. There's no gift ban enacted. And so it makes it really difficult to think that your legislator is doing what's in the best interest of people and not in their own best interest or in the best interest of the lobbies who are whining and dining them.
Right. Yeah. Here. So let me just throw in, I'll do a little plug for you, right? So first off, I wouldn't be speaking to if you were taking corporate PAC money. That's one of my. I don't approach anybody until I've weeded that out. So it's your website is voteforzrinski.org, right? So campaigns like yours are run on small dollars. They're run on people making donations, right? So throw Tara $7, $27, $107, whatever you can afford, right? This is a flippable seat, and it's people powered campaign. So she needs your support. So send her a couple of bucks. And I'll mention that again. I'll mention that again at the end. And the election is November 3rd, of course.
Exactly.
So let me pull up the district, right? Because it's one of those really fun gerrymandered districts, right? So
it is.
Tell me about, I'll just throw it to you. Tell me about PA 138, brag on your district. What's there?
So 138 is a really interesting district, because you see that part that's kind of cut out. That would be a very Democratic part, right?
Oh, what a coincidence. And
I know, it's kind of funny the way it's gerrymandered. But that northern tier that you see is a very rural district, and it's very red. So then you have like Hanover and Bethlehem Township down below, and they're not as dominant in Republican, but this seat has been tailored so that Republicans can hold this seat. I mean, it's just blatant. I think, and I believe, and I know that I have a great chance in flipping this particular seat, because I'm already a Northampton County Councilwoman. I was elected in the 2017 election to start serving in 2018. And no one thought that I could win that seat. I was an underdog because I was largely unknown in the area. It was the first time I ever came on the political scene. And I remember going home on election day and just tired, because I had been up for like 3 days, putting out signs, organizing lit, organizing people to be at the polls, because I was an organizer. So I was running essentially my own campaign. And I was knocking on doors trying to wake people up in the morning and get into the polls. And by the time 7:30 came around, I was like, I'm going home. I don't know if I'm going to win. I went home. I sat in front of the couch. I got a call at like 9 o'clock, and they said, Tara, you better get down to the party because you're winning. And I was like, what? And I wasn't just winning. I was like, it was vying for first and second place. And that was like so exciting. So I know that I am like the hardest worker. I will give my heart and soul and every bit of my passion over to whatever I'm doing. And for this race, I'm getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to bed at 1 o'clock at night. And all through the day, I'm trying to either, dial for dollars, knock on doors, or organize something, talk to voters, anything I can do in between jobs. I'll be in my car talking to people, like trying to get whatever dollar amount I can to help my campaign move along. Because these campaigns are so incredibly expensive. And this is another layer of reforms that we need, campaign finance reforms. Because what it does, the cost of these elections basically says to the public that you can't run if you're poor. You need to run if you're rich. I can't even tell you how many people have told me that I need to quit all my jobs. And as a single mom, I can't do that. I need to have a roof over my head. But that's the expectation. You quit your job, you run, you win, you pay your debts off in the end. You gamble that chance. Our election system and our democracy should not depend on whether you're wealthy to determine whether you could run.
Yeah.
Because then only the interests of those people are served. Like, I'm a middle class individual, and I understand how hard it is to string paychecks together to try to pay your rent. And at this time when, you have people who are suffering, who don't actually have jobs anymore or have been laid off or furloughed, the eviction notices are coming because their protection has been lifted through the legislature.
Yeah.
You think about all these people who are going to be hurting in the coming months, and my heart goes out to them. And I just want to help. I want to fix it. I want to make it better. I'm just trying to get in there.
I love that you said you told the story about your dad when I asked you what animated you, because then that's not a careerist view. That's someone that has a passionate need to want to repair an injustice, right? And his employment history sort of left him high and dry. And he's not, he's, like you said, he's probably never going to retire, right? And he's not unique in that story, tragically, right? We all know people, and we're probably among them, right? So we can do better on these things, and you're so right. And it's these candidates like you are exactly who I feature. You don't take corporate PAC money. You have a personal motivation, right? You're not consultant oriented. You're not parsing every word. You're just you're just a human, right? You want to serve the public. So I respect everyone, you for running. Let me ask a little bit about, you mentioned kind of the northern part of your district is a bit is more red, and it's more rural, right? But these issues, right? The worker rights issues, right? We didn't really get into Medicare for All so much, but one of the things that you hear around the country is rural areas have a for-profit hospital in a rural area will shut down because it's not turning a profit, right? It's just business, right? So that's one of the things that Medicare for All, guaranteed healthcare, will provide. You won't have to drive 2 hours to go see a specialist, or take a day off of work that you can't afford to go see a specialist, right? Can you talk about, maybe these human issues that you're talking about, workers' rights, healthcare, right, the environment? They're not blue issues; they're human issues, right? So, how are they landing with that northern part of the district, and how are you framing those planks in your platform to those?
Well, the way I word it and what I tell people is, it's not really radical to think that everybody deserves a livable wage. It's not really radical to think that healthcare is a human right and that everybody deserves access to it. And when you say access to it, I mean, like, they don't have to go into debt and bankruptcy to pay for, a stay at the hospital. Imagine that. Like, it's not contingent on their employment, whether or not they have health care. They can switch jobs with ease. And in these rural areas, it's not just medical treatment that is not available necessarily. It's also like drug and alcohol treatment, treatment centers for the opioid crisis and heroin addiction. People have to travel back and forth on buses sometimes because they don't have transportation or they're not in walking distance of a location. And that really impairs your rehabilitation for any issue, medical or psychological or addiction oriented in your recovery. So these are issues that we face here in Northampton County and in Lehigh Valley in general. We had a huge, or still have a huge opioid crisis, and people are hurting because the treatment centers aren't necessary. They're packed. They're not available. And right now during this crisis, it's very hard to get treatment because a lot of those places are shutting down because they're dependent on funding. And that has, gone by the wayside. We have a budget deficit now of $6 billion in the State House and a 5-month budget that we're working off of that is going to have to be balanced with newly elected officials. So we're thinking about all these things as we come into November. And it's almost like a wish list in these rural districts. Like, what do you want? Like, how do you want your economy to go? Because we know that they're all hurting in rural districts. They need broadband. Their education systems are not necessarily funded at the same way that our school districts are in the city. They might not have the same allocations of resources. And so we have to make sure in these rural districts that they get what they need too, equitably. And that's one of the issues in our district is equitable distribution, of healthcare, of resources, of aid.
Right on. Yeah, and you one of the things that you talk about often is local property tax reform, right? So, when I see that, my assumption is, either there's some real estate lobby that has paid former representatives to, give them abatements or whatnot, that somehow it's skewed against, your dad, the working class, right? Can you talk about? I could be wrong about that. That's just my assumption when I see that. What's the story with property taxes in your district?
Well, property taxes are kind of like a layered issue. Here, our property taxes are tied to education funding. So when the budget was cut by $1 billion under Corbett, right? That budget that budgetary deficit has never come back fully. So it has to be made up somewhere because you still need public school education. So They shake it out of taxpayers. And I always say that they're shaking nickels out of taxpayers because they're like the lowest rung of individuals with money, right? What we should do is go after, some of the businesses and corporations that don't pay taxes, like Amazon, where the owner, Jeff Bezos, makes like beaucoup bucks, on an hourly basis, right? So we have corporate tax rate that's at 9.9%. But very few businesses actually have to pay that. Now, if we would close the Delaware loophole and hold businesses accountable to pay for that, we could have a more of a permanent revenue stream for education. And we wouldn't need to do some of these things. But people in Pennsylvania sometimes are afraid that their jobs will go away. And yet there's so many other solutions for jobs. If we would join the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, we could create 27,000 high-paying jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's what's important. If we would, if we would do I don't want to say a national infrastructure bank, but a Pennsylvania infrastructure bank. We could also fix our roads, our bridges, bring back broadband, high-speed rail, fix these big infrastructure problems that we have in Pennsylvania, and employ people in Pennsylvania at a very high family sustaining wage. These are the things that are really important when I think about them, because we definitely need jobs in Pennsylvania, but we can't sacrifice the environment and our kids' education and our future for, taxes and corporations.
Yeah, here. What's the platform? Republicans tend to run on jobs and there's a lot of hot air and whatnot. But what's their what's their framing in this race, and how do you counter that to, like I said, that especially that the rural areas, you have your work cut out for you in the districts, shall I say, right, constituent wise, right?
Yes,
So
I do.
how are you flipping them? Like, how are you, sort of piercing their campaign strategies, if you will?
Well, part of what the two main issues on my opponent's platform are rights of the unborn and guns. These are two
Again,
really,
it's always those
yes,
two.
always, well, because they're huge wedge issues.
They work,
You can get somebody's vote just by saying that a Democrat would take their guns away, when no Democrat wants to take your guns away. I tell people that all the time. I understand the Second Amendment. I understand your rights. I understand that you're gun owners. I understand that you want to be able to hunt and fish and do all the sportsman things that you do, and that this is a part of your culture and your life. I get it. No one's coming for them, right?
Right.
But you have to be responsible. That's it. Responsible gun ownership. That's it. Background checks. Good idea, right? That shouldn't be the reason why somebody doesn't vote for all the other things that a progressive like me would be able to do.
Right.
And then the rights of the unborn. That's always a big, huge red flag issue for people, because we do have a lot of religious people in this community. And a lot of people don't know, I went to seminary for 5 years. I've studied religion and theology and philosophy, and that's my jam. And I understand that, we have these big arguments about when life begins, or is it a woman's choice and stuff like that. You know what? Beyond that, let's talk about comprehensive abstinence-based sexual education. Let's talk about making that available so that women don't have to get to that choice. Let's talk about access and availability to healthcare and contraception. These are the things that are going to prevent any woman from having to make this choice. And then let's also talk about how it is that we talk to our children about how to have relationships and how to behave with one another. We have this sort of like struggle that goes on between, a culture of male dominance and female submission at times. We have to talk about women being empowered to make choices and to make good choices. Now, I don't think that right should be taken away from women, but I think that if you want to have that right available, you have to have all the other things in place to make it so that that is the last possible option that you have. And so I tell people about that. And I tell people about the scenarios where women are in domestic abuse situations and they're pregnant and they're scared and things happen. People make choices, and it's really hard to judge another woman for the choice that she makes when you can't even bear that life yourself. So to me, all those other reasons that you talk about in terms of sexual, or what did I say? Abstinence-based sexual education, a comprehensive plan, which I used to actually teach at the church that I worked at, which was like awesome because I saw how effective it was in the kids that went through that course. They knew who they were. They knew more about themselves as individuals and as beings in relationships, which I think is so important because we kind of gloss over that thing. We have all these flashing lights around us with videos and TV and everything else and advertisements that, pique your interests or kind of entice you with desire and things like that. And we flaunt sexuality. But then we have that alternate message that says, don't do that. And that's the only solution. And it can't be the only solution. We have to be a little bit more candid with our conversations. And so that's what I talk to people about. And I think because I'm so frank and honest about it, and I don't skirt around the issue and I don't try to dodge it, that people actually respect that. And, but that's the way I am about everything.
Yeah, that's interesting. The way you frame it is not the way I frame it. And it's probably like you said, you had theological background, and it's the district, right? You use the term rights of the unborn, right? There are terms that we use, like you say when you talk to people in the northern part, you have, Second Amendment, you Democrats have just heard they're coming to take your guns away for so many years. It's just internalized that you have to lead with, I'm not trying to take your guns away. And then you have to sort of give this qualifier of, defense of the Second Amendment or whatever. And I hear pro-choice and I hear anti-choice as the framing for, the more progressive side of that. So, I realize in certain districts, you can't, maybe you can't be as direct in some of the framing on some of these things, right? It's interesting.
Well, your framing and your word choice is everything, really.
Exactly.
Because
right.
You see how subtle the Republicans are with how they market their platform. And that's exactly what it is. They are skilled at marketing and framing, and people buy it hook, line, and sinker. It's like everything that we learned with like pipeline companies and natural gas. You see how they say it's safe, cheap, and abundant. Safe, cheap, and abundant. And if I say that 3 times and I say it again and again and again, then what are you going to think? Oh, natural gas is safe, cheap, and abundant. Oh, I need natural gas. But what they don't tell you is that the alternative is actually safe. It is actually clean. It is actually pretty abundant if we would allow for the proliferation of solar energy or wind energy or geothermal or hydro. These things we can have, but there's just roadblocks ahead. And I don't understand why people don't like that, because we are such a country based on choice. And one of the things that I did, the reason why I got into the solar industry was that in my HOA, they wouldn't allow solar panels. And I really wanted solar panels on my house. So I had to go around to the whole community and get like 70 some signatures out of 109 households. And it took me a year. I did that. I got onto the HOA board. I became president, and I passed the amendment to allow solar panels on the front of my house.
Right.
And that's how passionate I felt about that right. And the way that I got people to sign that paper was I said, I would tell them, this is a rights issue. I should have the right to choose clean energy if I want to. And I should have the right to create that clean energy on my roof. So basically what you're doing is denying me my right. How do you feel about that? That doesn't sit with people well. So this is a rights issue. So the same people who get irritated with eminent domain and property rights and things like that are the same people that should get irritated when they are denied the right to clean energy or denied the right to choose what kind of energy they want.
Yeah, right on. How about, during the COVID time, there's a lot of talk of universal broadband. Is that an issue what's your position on that?
It's a huge issue, and it's one that comes up a lot because in a rural district, you have a lot of people who don't get reception. And right now we're educating kids remotely, either in a hybrid format or totally online. And kids don't necessarily have access. One of the things that we did in Northampton County was that we created these vouchers through the local internet companies, RCN, and I guess a bunch of Service Electric and whatever else we had going on. And these companies would provide vouchers for like 6 months for people to get internet access, which is really important. And even when you do have internet access, you still need to expand the broadband and wireless capabilities because so many people are drawing on this in a household that it weakens. Like right before this, my internet went out and I thought, oh my gosh, am I going to be able to do the interview? Oh.
Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've had that as well. So let me ask, so we don't know, do we know the Republican that you're running against? Did they have their primary yet? Or I thought they were.
Yeah, they did have their primary. They beat she obviously beat her opponent. I won't mention her name because, why do that?
Of course. Do we have, my question was going to be, do we have a debate in the works? Is that a possibility?
I would love to debate my opponent. I've had my campaign reach out to her campaign. I've had other people reach out to her campaign, and there is crickets. So there's no, but there's
Right.
definitely no yes. There is a no response.
Okay. That's one thing I always encourage people too. Like you can obviously vote for Zrinski.org. You can volunteer for Tara's campaign. I'm assuming you have phone banking, text banking, and so forth, right?
Right. We
So
have phone banking, text banking, lit dropping. We have postcard writing campaign that's really been successful. And we do have a fundraiser coming up called the Eco Jam.
okay.
And I know that we have, it's a virtual music series experience. We have lots of great musicians, and Josh Fox from Gasland 1 and 2 is actually going to be there with us. So I hope that people join us. Yeah. So we're pretty excited about this event. We have lots of local musicians who will be playing live, and it is just like a fantastic lineup of different activists in the movement, in the environmental movement. And I don't want to ruin it for everybody, but I think everybody should tune into this. But purchase a ticket. Tickets start at $18 and they go all the way up to $250 for a ticket. And
Right on.
every dollar counts. One of the great things about our campaign is that we are people powered, and we have almost 800 individual donations.
Wow.
It is amazing the individual donation count that we have. And some of that doesn't even account for the checks that have been mailed to me, which
Right
is
on.
really awesome. It's overwhelming support.
That's cool. Yeah, this is totally a winnable seat. I love that Josh Fox is participating in that. He's awesome.
Mhm.
Yeah, very cool. So again, the election is November 3rd. We covered a lot of ground here, but I'll just give you another opportunity. Is there anything that we didn't hit on issue-wise that's pertinent to your district? I noticed, we talked a lot about environmental stuff. Is there any, talk about the pipeline. Are there any Superfund sites, any other shenanigans environmentally or platform-wise that you want to talk about?
Well, there are a lot of environmental issues in our area because we do live in a rural area. We're trying to keep our streams clean. We have the Bushkill Creek, which has had 14 dewatering events within the past 21 years. That's an issue that we're trying to. So a dewatering event is the local cement plant. Basically, we live in an area that has lots of karst geology. And if you know what that is, it's like a lot of limestone calcium deposits. When the acid rain comes, it collects into the holes and then creates deep pockets called sinkholes. And these sinkholes then hold all the water. So as the cement companies mine and disturb the earth, they create more pockets. Sometimes the water goes in there. So this particular company has 2 pumps that pump water back into the Bushkill Creek. But what happens is when those pumps go out, the Bushkill Creek, which is a Class A high quality watershed and trout fishery, when that goes, you have the river runs dry, or the creek runs dry for like 3 miles. So then you have what's called a fish kill. So they've had several dewatering events, and we just had an event recently, and I think I want to say it was June 5th, but it was this past summer, and thousands of fish and microinvertebrates were killed in the process. So the question is, how do we mitigate this, and how do we stop this from happening? So what I did on Northampton County Council was I got a lot of the different groups who had been working independently, and I organized them into a coalition, and I put it together in a resolution. And now we have a group where we can all talk to each other about how it is that we're going to approach this. And we're going to do it with the company, so that, because we know that they're stakeholders in it, we know the surrounding landowners are also stakeholders. And this is part of what I really want to be able to do, is bring people together to find solutions. We know that stuff happens environmentally and people get fined. Sometimes it's a lot cheaper to pay the fine than to actually mitigate the situation. In this situation, we're going to try to come together to find a solution that makes everybody happy and keeps water in the creek. But beyond that, there's sludge issues, there's landfill issues, garbage, waste, all sorts of things happening, and warehouses that are bringing truck traffic and air pollution into our area. So really, from day one, there's no time to waste. to address these issues and try to like hit the ground running.
Yeah. And we didn't even talk about the global implications of that, just district specific, right? But yeah,
Right.
yeah, thanks for sharing that. So I'm gonna just pull this up again. Eco Jam is Monday at 7 with Josh Fox and a lot of local musicians, like you said. Starts at 6. Ticket prices, assuming you can find this out at, well, if you're watching this, just screen cap this. That's what I always do.
Yeah, you can go to actblue.com.
Right on. And voteforzrinski.org is your website again. Election is November 3rd. You know, hassle the Republican and try to get a debate. Don't hassle them. Send them a friendly note encouraging them to debate Tara, because that, you know, that only benefits the people. So yeah, Tara, you know, and then, you know, I'll just say it again. The thing that you just said right there about organizing on the city council is the same. You're the same person of same motivation that organized your HOA to get the solar panels, right? So what better person to advocate for the public than Tara? So, you know, in PA's 138, you know, this is our person. So, you know, throw her some money, you know, offer to volunteer. Let's flip this seat. I think it's a winnable one. So awesome.
Thank you so much, Eric. I appreciate being on your show so much. And I know in my heart that I am going to flip this seat, and because I have so many people behind me. Now we can get more people behind me and that'd be awesome. But then we're just all part of Team Tara, you know? So I can't wait.
And I would be remiss if I didn't let you go without, your nails are pretty incredible. I've seen them flash.
Oh.
Right? That's pretty awesome too. So.
Oh, thanks. Well, you know.
That's cool.
Thanks.
All right, Tara. Well, this is, you know, yeah, again, good luck on November 3rd. Maybe we'll talk again before then, but you know, thanks for running this vigorous campaign. I think it's flippable. Voteforzrinski.org. Tune into her event on Monday. I have an interview Monday at 6 too, but watch her thing, watch mine later. Figure it out.
Yeah, thank you.
So awesome. Been a real pleasure to chat with you, Tara. Good luck on the campaign trail. Stay safe.
Thank you so much, Eric. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Have a great evening. Bye.